there's a fear that the Netanyahu government is preparing for full-scale war against Hezbollah to the north of Israel on the Lebanese border. After more than 5,000 rocket strikes in both directions since the Hamas massacre in October, Hezbollah are now reaching into Israeli cities, including Tel Aviv. But a new front in the war could bring in Iran, and that is a truly terrifying prospect. I think we haven't spent enough time on the Middle East crisis recently, so I'm delighted to be joined now by the director of the Reinhard Programme on Counterterrorism and Intelligence at the Washington Institute, Matthew Levitt, who's just returned himself from the Israel-Lebanese border. Matthew, great to have you on the show. Just tell us, first of all, how you found things on the border.
Thanks for having me on the show. The border was empty. If you go all the way up to the border on the Israeli side, it's a closed military zone. So flak jackets, helmets, only with permission. Communities completely abandoned. The Metula, which is one of the northernmost communities that I visited a week ago today, was shelled just a few hours after I left. Kiryat Shimona, just to the south, a couple of miles, a small city, also abandoned. And I was on the Israeli side, but on the Lebanese side, you'll find much the same.
So this is what we used to call it the First World War no man's land. It sounds like both sides may be making preparations, and there have been Hezbollah rockets and drones landing quite deep into Israel, haven't there?
There have. Hezbollah has an escalation ladder, and it's not like it's only in one direction. It goes up, it goes down. But Hezbollah has been attacking Israel almost daily since October 8th. The Israelis withdrew some 50 to 70,000 civilians from the communities in the north. They're living families to a hotel room now for 9 months. And the question is how much longer Israeli society and politicians and the military, for that matter, can tolerate that type of a situation.
I can't understand why Israel would go on the offensive quite at the moment, because I've been told, and I don't know if this is true, that by the end of this year, certainly, the radar and the new anti-rocket, I'm trying to remember what they're called, but the new anti-rocket laser, that was the word, silly me, the new lasers will be ready, which will take down Hezbollah rockets much more quickly. So why would they attack now?
Well, I think the Israelis learned the hard way on October 7th that you simply cannot put all your eggs in the technology basket. The Israelis had incredible technology, overlapping systems in the south, and yet Hamas still was able to succeed. It's not clear when the laser system is going to be available, and even if it were to be perfectly functioning and ready at a certain date, you can't rely on that. So right now, the Israelis just announced this week that they're introducing an old-style gun system to shoot down drones. But the problem is not just drones, and the lasers won't work against cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, precision-guided missiles. And so on the one hand, there's a significant pressure in Israel against going further into a full-scale war in the north, mostly because that war would be devastating not only for Hezbollah and Lebanese, but for Israel. It would be a war like Israel's never fought before, with a significant number, thousands of rockets raining on Israel daily for weeks. The flip side argument is that this situation cannot be allowed to continue, that the military is already deployed. Those communities about 4 to 5 kilometers from the border are already evacuated. And it would be much harder to restart again later. I fear that the reality is that we may avoid a full escalation on the northern front, Israel's northern front, Lebanon's southern front now, if there is a hostage prisoner deal and a pause in the fighting in the south, because Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah has said that Hamas's Yahya Sinwar is negotiating for them all. But even if that happens, that the likelihood is that there will be a significant Israel-Hezbollah war in the next 1 to 3 years, because Israel is no longer willing to live with a gun to its head, not from the south and not from the north.
Well, I know that the Foreign Office here and I think foreign ministries across Europe are watching this and are really, really worried at the moment. The other aspect of this, of course, is whether or not it brings in Iran. What's your view about that?
From the Iranian perspective, their great success over the past 9 months has been successfully testing their theory of uniting the fronts, that if a war starts with one of their proxies, all the proxies, and maybe even they themselves get involved. That's what we've seen over the past 9 months, most recently with a Houthi drone penetrating into Tel Aviv. Now, the Iranians have one real red line of their own, which is why their attacks on Israel in April were so astounding. That red line is they don't want the war to come onto Iranian territory. So while you can't assume that the Iranians won't do things, they're going to want to have their proxies do as much as possible. But you're right, it is a huge concern.
And finally, what about, this might be a conspiracy theory, I don't know, but you hear a lot in London the thought that actually because Netanyahu fears prosecution and jail if he loses power, that he will carry on fighting in order to stay in power, in order to stay out of jail.
Look, Netanyahu certainly has his legal troubles and political troubles, no question. That argument, to the extent that is true, is usually articulated vis-a-vis the South, and that's why maybe he hasn't been so eager to pursue a deal in the South, though it now seems that that deal is slowly inching forward. The North is of a completely different caliber, and I think it's clear Netanyahu is the one who doesn't want that war in the North because it would be so severe, whereas some of his military advisors are saying, no, now's the time because militarily we're now deployed, the communities are evacuated, it'd be easier to do it now than later.